You're welcome to the Economy and Politics Show, where we discuss key socioeconomic developments as it affects the households. To all Nigerians, it's a public holiday as we mark the 62nd anniversary of Nigeria's independence. What a very special day to reflect on. Today, our conversation will be on the 2023 elections campaign, key businesses to watch. Yes, elections are gearing up and the campaigns have started, and we're going to look at the businesses that are going to be of immense value this period, and of course, conversations around the economy. But from last week, we'd just like to give you some developments. But first, let me introduce our guest for today. Mr. Kelvin Emmanuel is a public affairs analyst. Nice to have you on the show once again, Kelvin.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Kelvin, and how is the federal capital today?
Very, very well. Thank you.
Very, very well. That's the center point of activities, and definitely by next year we should be having a new occupant in the presidential Villa Sorok. So that's going to be much of the conversation that will be happening all through till election day.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. For last week, major story for last week was the commencement of the presidential campaigns for the 2023 general elections. This also goes across gubernatorial and National Assembly elections, which will be holding next year. Various candidates have already rolled out their plans, have commenced visits across the country to make their pitch for why they should be elected as leaders. To mark the campaign, the National Peace Committee, in collaboration with the Independent National Electoral Commission, hosted the 18 presidential candidates to a Peace Pact signing ceremony to ensure that the 2023 general elections will be hitch-free of violence. It was attended by all the presidential candidates except that of the All Progressive Congress, who was represented by his running mate. And that was the major political story from last week. If you're joining us, it's the Economy and Politics Show, and of course, it's a public holiday. We're marking it with a conversation on the 2023 elections campaign, key businesses to watch. My guest is Mr. Kelvin Emmanuel. Kelvin is a public affairs analyst. Well, Kelvin, let's first begin with the macroeconomic situation in the country. As you know, that these are dire straits. We're in dire straits as a nation. These are challenging times. A public debt of 42.82 trillion naira as at second quarter 2022. We are also grappling with a headline inflation of 20.52% and a food inflation of over 23%. Also, the Central Bank of Nigeria last week in the Monetary Policy Committee meeting raised interest rate by 150 basis points from 14% to 15.5%. And we still have the last updated unemployment rate at fourth quarter 2022 or fourth quarter 2020, which was 33.1%. This shows us very challenging indicators. And how is this going to shape as we build up to this election period?
Well, thank you. Thank you for this question. This is an inflection point for Nigeria. And the reason why it's an inflection point is because the road Nigeria chooses to go on will determine the next 10 to 15 years in terms of the size of its economy, the health of its economy, the welfare of its citizens. You have a section of Nigerian political ideology or socio-economic ideology that believes the way to run Nigeria is to borrow to cover budget deficits and use government interventions and public finance to fund economic welfare programs like sharing cash, like conditional cash transfers, and kind of keep the people like not upset by keeping petrol prices at 40 cents per liter, which is the lowest in sub-Saharan Africa, right? That has encouraged a lot of round tripping of PMS, because the true north of daily consumption of PMS in Nigeria is 40 million liters of PMS. Until now, the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation has been unable to provide empirical evidence to support the fact that Nigeria consumes 80 million liters of PMS daily like it claims it does. A few weeks ago, you had a testimony at the National Assembly where the DG of Customs, the current DG of Customs, said in a recorded testimony under oath that his workers at the borders has evidence of interception of PMS, up to 52% of the PMS imported into Nigeria daily. You have another section of Nigeria, another political ideology, socio-economic ideology, that believes that the way to run Nigeria is for you to get the government out of the way of businesses and focus the government on regulating businesses. It's for you to draw down the debts, amend the Finance Act to ensure that the MDAs increase their revenue generation and increase the revenue to GDP ratio from 7.4%, which is the lowest in the average of the most performing economies in sub-Saharan Africa and in Africa. Yeah, because you have Egypt at 22%, you have South Africa at 18%. Yeah. And unleash the power of production by embarking on backward integration, right? By floating the currency to align the exchange rate and attract foreign direct investments, by increasing the production of oil, ensuring that you not only increase the production of oil and export, but you refine the oil into other derivatives like AGO, like Jet A1, like automotive gasoline oil, like bitumen binders, like marine oil, refine LPG, right?
That's what the Gulf countries are doing, Kelvin.
Yes, exactly. Because what you have in Nigeria basically is a situation where we export raw materials and we import finished products.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why you have the total Nigerian exports for 2021 at...
According to the former Minister of Trade, Dr. Segun Aganga, he said no nation transits from being poor to rich exporting raw materials. That was his message all through.
No nation does it.
Yeah.
No nation does it. I was looking at the list of the top 10 items Nigeria agricultural commodities Nigeria exports. Yeah. And it's a shame that Nigeria is celebrating exporting 114 billion naira worth of cocoa as the third largest exporter of cocoa in the world, when the global chocolate industry is worth $100 billion US per year, which means Nigeria, for the 6 months ending June, exported barely $250 million worth of cocoa. And the global value chain is worth $100 billion. I mean, for a country that has the third largest output of cocoa in the world. So you have these two competing ideologies, that the way to run an economy is to stop subsidizing petroleum, PMS, by importing it and paying an under-recovery price, stop subsidizing the exchange rate, allow the free markets to flow. That's the way you run an economy. How do you run an economy by borrowing money to fund the budget when you have over 120% in your government revenue to debt, your debt servicing to government revenue ratio? How do you plan to run an economy like that? Your ratio of petroleum subsidy to your budget is 23%. In Kenya, where they have a ratio of petroleum subsidy to government budget of 4.8%, when President Williams Ruto took over office barely 3 weeks ago, on the second day of office, he announced the removal of PMS subsidy, which is $1.2 billion US in Kenya. So you have two competing ideologies, and you can see very clearly that one ideology is flawed, and it's only going to lead to keep the crony capitalism system, favor the people who are close to the government and understand political patronage, and impoverishes the rest of the country. How do you have a country, Nigeria, where you're celebrating 470 billion naira share to states, when you have Osun State, for example, that has 2 million ounces of gold? You have Enugu that has coal. It has bitumen that has lithium iron ore. You have River State that has the largest deposit of natural gas and crude oil in Nigeria. Yep. You have states in the northwest, in the northeast, in the north, for example, Niger State has the highest deposits of shea nuts. Nigeria has the highest output of shea nuts in the world at 39%. In 2017, the National Export Promotion Council, NEPC, listed shea nuts as one of the 15 agricultural commodities that has the potential for producing the most foreign exchange revenue for the country. You have a huge market in processing shea, for example, into premium grade A butter and shea oil. The way for you to unlock the prosperity of Nigeria is to devolve powers to the states and allow the states to explore their natural resources, change the formula, the principles of derivation.
I hear you very well, Kelvin.
If you don't incentivize devolution of powers, if you don't incentivize devolution of powers to the states, you won't have governors that are thinking.
Very strong point. Very, very strong point. And that is where we anchor, and definitely it's very clear. It's a battle of ideas, and people should be very informed on how they engage. But let's look at businesses to watch. I mean, we've seen the infograph about that. I mean, there are businesses that are definitely going to be positioned to derive value this period. Talk about transportation, the value chain of aviation, road transport, even hailing services, Uber, Bolt. They'll be heavily engaged during this campaign period. Or even talk about the waterways too being deployed in the South-South region and other areas that are riverine. Look at the security guards company, though the Inspector General of Police has warned that there are 88 non-main security agencies that must not be armed. If they are armed, there's going to be some prosecution taking place. But those security companies will be heavily engaged too. Look at the caterers, look at the activities that will be happening around the media, of course, jingles, interviews, a lot of activities will be happening. And look at event planners that will be involved as we see various candidates launch activities. For you, Kelvin, what are those businesses you see really creating value, and how can Nigerians position?
Well, to be honest with you, for the election season, you expect that the printing industry is going to do very well. The hospitality industry will do very well. The transport sector is going to do very well, albeit their gains might be shortchanged by the rise in the prices of aviation fuel, Jet A1, diesel, automotive gasoline, oil. And if, for example, Nigeria doesn't experience any scarcity in the availability of PMS, government says for guidance, they don't expect to. They're basically saying that they are not going to remove PMS subsidy until the next government comes into power, because this present administration is saying that they don't plan to remove it until May of 2023. It's just saying that when I leave office, the next person can decide, you know. So the transportation sector has a lot of potential, but my fear is for the fact that the price of AGO has gone up 300% in the last 7 months, and Jet A1 price is also somewhere near 900 naira per liter. You know, that's what my impact on their cost to income and their operating income, you know, and cost them serious headwinds in that might wipe out any surge in patronage they get for the transportation sector. You know, but I'm curious to see how businesses, for example, will pivot away from the regular, normal sources for energy into alternative sources of energy. For example, setting up solar farms using gas generators, compressed natural gas, and you know, as alternative to diesel. You know, in this period where the prices are very high, and it's a source of headache for the management and boards of a lot of companies in Nigeria.
Very, very important. But of course, you've highlighted the fact that they're going to benefit, but also they on their own part have to manage their costs so that they don't lose out from these huge opportunities. But as we wind down, looking at this period of campaigns, promises are being made, people articulate points. How critical is economic manifesto? You have a manifesto, but you have in it economic plans. And how should people discern those that are really going to be pragmatic in moving Nigeria out of the challenging doldrum it is?
Well, in my opinion, any economic manifesto that doesn't address the issues around reviewing the legislative list, the exclusive, concurrent, and residual, granting independence, financial autonomy to the judiciary and legislature, financial autonomy to the local governments, changing the principles of derivation, and giving the states economic autonomy, like moving away the attention, the excessive attention we have in Nigeria of focusing shipping and maritime in the southwest in Lagos to the eastern flank in Calabar, in Akwa Ibom, in River State. Yeah, any economic plan that doesn't emphasize cutting down the size of governance drastically, plugging leakages, implementing the Stephen Obasanjo report to merge and wind down government MDs that are not functioning and are basic political patronage and settlement system. Yeah. Any political plan that doesn't lay a blueprint on how to ensure that there's backward integration and move Nigeria from a nation that consumes everything by importing to a nation that actually produces to equalize your balance of trade. For example, South Korea has last year total exports of 750 billion US dollars. Nigeria had exports of 448 billion dollars. Yeah. When you consider the size of the South Korean economy, the land mass, consider the population, yeah, and you consider that South Korea is a nation that is not blessed with natural resource compared to Nigeria, and you consider the fact that Saudi Arabia and Russia has profited so much from the surge in price of oil, crude oil, and gas that is currently about $34 to $35 per standard cubic feet in Europe because of the issues you have around geopolitics in Europe. Any economic plan that doesn't emphasize backward integration to increase the value of the exports Nigeria earns in NXP proceeds, both for the in foreign exchange earnings, yeah, and not just pay attention to the quantity of exports, because there's this fallacy we have in Nigeria that the way for you to earn more FX revenues is to increase your quantity and not pay attention to your quality.
Yeah.
If you increase the quantity of crude oil exports and not pay attention to actually keeping back your raw material and processing your crude oil into about 11 derivatives and instead exporting those derivatives for several multiples of the value, you're going to keep earning what you're earning. Nigeria's population is growing at 30% per year. We have 206 million today. The United Nations Food and Population Agency estimates that Nigeria will get to 390 to 400 million and become the fourth most populous country in the world by 2040. How are you going to stem the tide? By ensuring that you have systems that create economic opportunities for the people.
I think
any program, any manifesto that does not address these areas, is simple wishful thinking, and it's the regular system of making promises to the people so that they elect you into office and you continue the cycle of underdevelopment and poverty.
Thank you very much, Kelvin, for reading out those very key points. And I believe that all Nigerians are listening and candidates are listening, and definitely we have to be very discerning to ensure that we make this one count. Thank you once again, Mr. Kelvin Emmanuel, Public Affairs Analyst, for this interesting conversation around 2023 elections campaign, key businesses to watch. It's very important that as businesses are going to derive value from this, they also have to watch their costs and what will make them spend more. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
And that'll be all for this edition of the Economy and Politics Show. It's a public holiday, so you can continue to rest at the store, Nigerians, and reflect on Nigeria's independence and its 62nd one. But for all Nigerians, this is a time for us to reflect as we prepare for our general elections, to make the right decisions, to discern economic manifestos, and look out for those key plans that will cause this nation to experience inclusive economic growth. Till we come your way again, you can join our website, www.proshare.co, to watch our videos, read our news stories, and also our reports. Yes, our report is still fresh, the crude oil theft report. It's there for you to dissect and also gain some insights from. Also, follow our social media platforms displayed on the screen. Happy independence once again to all Nigerians. Thank you for watching and have a lovely day.